edgelord yet again.
Convince yourself all you need to.
I'm hilarious. I'm so funny.
Ew.
My reputation post-seeds me. You open the can of worms. Don't be surprised if they start wriggling.
Ew.
Silent night. Holy Batman. All is kryptonite. All is your phones are still in your hands. Round young virgins, none of them here.
Man, you
I
do
don't
know
know
it
why.
says round
Here's a
yawn virgins, not young virgins.
Yeah.
No.
Yawn.
I'm into the young ones. This edgelord
right.
here knows what he's talking about.
Not
Well-
young and not virgins.
He knows one thing.
Sincere regrets on all sides.
We are Squawking Dead, a podcast pulverizing programs beyond the Walking Dead universe. Sometimes we give you news, sometimes we make you laugh, most times we go deep. I'm your host, David Cameo.
I'm Cosmo Mom 09.
Blazy Gardner.
And Bridget, aka Punky Brewster.
And today we're here to talk to you about The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon's sixth and final episode of season 2 titled Au revoir les enfants, which means goodbye children. What is this title all about? Obviously it's goodbye children. There's a lot of overlap on here. Well, number one, let me just include this one fact. This episode is titled after a French film called also Au revoir les enfants. It's a 1987 film whereby the protagonist in this movie is called Père Jean,
Oh.
is modeled after a real-life headmaster slash priest called Père Jacques, who shelters Jewish children during the Holocaust amidst occupied France. If you had to transpose that to this episode, the film is basically about carrying the tragedy with you so that it is never forgotten. There's a lot of that here.
The title can also mean goodbye to innocence,
Yeah,
is
sure.
what I read online.
Goodbye to childhood.
Yes.
The lack of punctuation, too, by the way. Au revoir les enfants is like all in a row is like goodbye children.
Caudron saying goodbye to his brother because he did until the hallucinations.
He didn't.
But I think it's what you guys said too, but I really also think it means Daryl saying goodbye to Laurent in a very literal sense. And then Carol saying goodbye to Sophia at the end because she kept saying, I can't see her anymore other than as she was when she came out of the barn. In this, she was able to finally see her as she was before and let it go.
Let me just finish this thought on the film, though. It's interesting because the protagonists, they all don't make it except for one. It's the one child who was not Jewish, who witnessed and befriended after some teasing, one of the children who was Jewish, who was also marched off with Père Jean to Auschwitz. So he's telling the tale from his perspective 40 years later, saying, this is why I do this. This is why I have to tell this story. I have to carry this with me wherever I go to remember the, A, the injustice, and B, the people. There's a lot of that in Carol not saying goodbye to Sophia in the right way, Daryl feeling like his heart is walking off outside his body, going into a plane and heading to the Commonwealth, ideally and hopefully with Ash. There's that too. And maybe even, and I will give you guys a little bit of chum, when he has that conversation with Ash about children and being orphaned from your child, basically, and what that must be like. And we can touch on that a little bit more later. But one of the things he says is, I worry about plenty, which I thought was, okay, it's not just about Laurent, it's about all the children that I love too. I figured I'd include that for you people who don't believe Laurent is this child. It's fine. It's okay. We can be friends.
I also noticed that while he didn't say anything about Judith or RJ, who are, while not physically his children, basically are, because there's nobody else left for them. When Cadron was like, it was terrible to have to kill my own brother, and Daryl didn't come out and say, yes, I know exactly how you feel, because I had to do the same thing. I mean, I know Daryl's not like the most vocal person, but when someone is telling you these things, why is Daryl not commiserating? Not for sympathy from Cadron, but to say, yes, I understand how you feel.
Well, he says, I can imagine that. And he literally can, because he went through the same thing. We know that.
Right, killing Merle, his brother, on The Walking Dead.
There's another overlap there because his brother also had an old name. And I'm sure that that was also something that they joked about. Michelle, Merle, they both had these old names. It was something that their brothers probably gave them a hard time for. There's more there, but he does say, I can imagine that. It's just that that's how Daryl is. I mean, Daryl didn't tell the man he didn't kill his brother for 2 seasons when he easily could have said that at any point.
I don't think he had time.
Well, I mean, he could have been like, dude, you're not mad at me.
Well, and he didn't really find out really what he was mad about. And also there was a lot of chaos in the Thunderdome that he was in with the aggressive walkers. You killed my brother, Dixon. He's like thinking, everybody thinks that he killed their brother because he killed a lot of the Pouvoir soldiers. But actually, I was thinking about the other side of that conversation because I really did not write this in my notes because I had the same concerns as you did. Is this bad writing? But it could also be about Daryl not making it about him. I could see why you would say this is a perfect opportunity for him to say, I know what that's like. In fact, I spoke to the writers on this show, and I don't know if you know, they kind of drew tons of parallels between us, okay? I'm the younger brother whom you, my older brother, had to witness being murdered. We all have missing pieces of each other that fit. But then he didn't say that. They cut that out of the writer's room, and he didn't make it about himself, basically. It's like the writers didn't want us to know their evil plot to draw parallels between the two, which we already said on this show. So I'm sad to bring it up, and I'm going to cut this whole thing out because you don't deserve it.
No, I agree with that sentiment. And maybe it wasn't even a conscious thing, but he didn't want to make it about himself. Kadron was having a moment, opening up and letting things out, and Daryl just let him. It is really hard not to do that. There are people who like try to one up you, like, oh, well, I had it harder than that. But that's not what this is, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but that's not what it would have been about. He could have shared that moment with him, but instead he just let Kadron have it. And I think that was a better choice than to try to relate. Because also in that moment, well, I guess he did just find out that Daryl didn't actually kill his brother, but it's fresh information. And up until that very moment, he thought Daryl was the reason his brother was dead. So maybe just let that marinate a minute.
Let's take that a step further, if you don't mind, because narratively, or maybe on brand, because it is on brand for Daryl to not talk about himself. Let's be
Very
honest.
fair.
But
yes.
secondly, I think what the writers wanted you to focus on was that yet another woman lied and caused this whole thing. I mean,
Hey
not,
now.
okay.
Hey now.
All
right.
Sorry.
You
Let
just
me
sit
take a
your
step back.
tiny little, just you stop it right now.
My tiny little, excuse me, I have a huge butt. Okay.
As the kids
It's like-
say, a big back.
Now he's caked up.
Oh.
I'm learning new slang.
Big
I
back,
brought this
big
up on the
back.
podcast before, but my butt looks a lot like Station from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Yeah. And now I'm showing a picture of it on screen, and my butt
Your
as
ass?
well.
Don't
and
show
you're
your
like,
ass on screen.
Yeah. That's what's
No.
happening now on the
No, don't do that.
on the
Don't do
YouTube. The YouTube. Yes, he didn't want to talk about himself, but also he wanted to draw a parallel between this woman and Carol in a way, because it kind of brings it back to what Laurent says. Lying is bad, but if not for that, we wouldn't have all this, whatever this is, for better or for worse. And I think after the body count is done and the smoke is cleared, is it better? Maybe. It got Daryl to the point where he found somebody that I think, and there is an argument to be had about he and Isabel not loving each other, but maybe it was a one-sided thing. But she definitely did give him something, and that was hope that there are reasons to live, and that reason could be a person like Laurent. It could be other things too. Maybe more of those reasons will be revealed in the 3rd season as it pertains to Carol too, and he can give whatever that is to Carol as well on the journey that they're on too. I think they wanted you to focus more on that parallel rather than the narrative parallel between he and Caudron.
I think for this series, though, in terms of comparison to the later seasons of Fear the Walking Dead, this show doesn't explain absolutely everything out loud. The writers have left some room for silence in this show, which is really impactful. Take a look back at the first episode of the first season and how it was silent for the first 10 minutes straight. He does his recording. It was just him.
Right.
But there are these large spaces of silence. It allows for a scene to really breathe. And so I think this kind of plays into that, not having to outline absolutely everything because the viewer
Good point.
isn't that dumb.
That is just a full-scale example of show don't tell. rather than showing Daryl show up on the shore and run into people and be like, oh, I washed up on a boat. They showed us that entire time.
Well, yeah, and that whole journey leading up to that over time.
One of my favorite movies is The Black Stallion, late 70s. It's about a kid who gets shipwrecked on an island with a horse, and they're showing you how he connects with the horse. But there's no talking because there's nobody for him to talk to. It's the first hour of the movie, and it's just beautiful. You don't need the talking. By taking away the talking, you have to actually focus on the screen and watch what's going on.
It's not a movie that you could put on in the background.
Definitely not.
There are other people in the story who also are saying goodbye to children or saying goodbye to family members. I like that you brought up Caudron and his brother, because I actually didn't write that down. The story about Falou's next door neighbor's kid choking, saying goodbye to that kid. Anna Valeri wanted to come home, and that has some really cool connotations that for a character whom you could have just thrown away, both she and Daryl had a little bit more flesh on the bone. Daryl, for a character who you thought you knew everything about, I didn't know he could sing. I didn't know he could tune a guitar. That was some interesting information. But Anna Valeri as well, you get to know a little bit more about her story, how she wanted to be a singer. She left home in a huff, but she kind of came to the realization that her mother was in her own way just trying to protect her years down the line. I thought that was a kind of cool thing to include, a child saying goodbye to her mother and wanting to come home.
There's also Falou saying goodbye to everyone. To some degree, he views as, yes, they're his brothers in arms, but he's older than them. So it's kind of like they're spreading their wings. they're going. And so I think there's something to that too. Yeah, it's a theme throughout the episode, I guess.
Akila looking for her sister Jamila. Little touches that flesh out characters, but also tie into the episode. Sharon and I had a chance to rap before the show, and I said, can I get a general temperature reading? And she launches into this episode saying all the things she's just basically said, if you don't mind, and you'll flesh this out a little bit better. It wasn't the best episode of the season, I don't think. And I'm wondering if you guys agree or disagree, but Sharon, why don't you explain that a little bit more so that we can collect our thoughts on how we feel about that.
Being a season finale, it should have been bigger. There should have been more to it. And it just kind of felt like they were just like, okay, we're done. We'll see you guys next year or next 2 years or whenever it comes back. And I was just underwhelmed by it. I enjoyed seeing Isabel again. Please don't take this like I'm saying I didn't like it, because I did like the episode. Anna Valeri, I really loved her, the way she handled that, even though it ended up she died. But she was like, yeah, I can take it or leave it. Go ahead, whatever. I would totally watch the Caudron Falou Roadshow buddy movie for like a whole season. They were hilarious.
I loved the episode. Now, I do agree it did not feel like a season finale. The pacing was kind of all over the place. I remember thinking it went by way too quickly. That's not a bad thing. I was like engaged the whole time. So when it ended, I was like, what? Can't end there. But in classic Walking Dead fashion, we almost always get a really big cliffhanger, and we didn't. But to be fair, we didn't for the end of season 1 either. I was
just going to ask you.
So maybe that's kind of the MO of this series. Maybe they're like, we're not going to leave it on this huge cliffhanger. They make it to the nest, and then maybe he's going to leave, maybe he's not. That wasn't a huge cliffhanger, though. That wasn't like, I don't know who's in the barn, or I know who's in the barn, now what happens, which is how that went, that mid-season finale. The Walking Dead proper did that all the time.
It's easy to compare, though, the end of the first season and this season, because it's even less of a cliffhanger. At least in the first season, you saw the boat in the background, you see Laurent behind him, and there's that tension. Here, the tension is completely absent. You don't know what's going to happen next. You know they're going somewhere. There's nothing keeping him from France. There's nothing behind him. There's only forward. So even just comparing it to this series, I'm not assigning a value judgment on that, because I actually thought about this as well. And I was thinking to myself, these seasons come out so quickly. While the series was coming out, they went to Madrid to film season 3. They're all about the Daryl series is what I'm picking up on. And so it's almost as though I don't mind too much that they decided to do it this way, because I think they're starting to recognize with only 6 episodes to the season, to your point, Bridget, they are trying to step away from that. Maybe their whole point is to kind of treat each season as a vignette rather than a banger season finale. Negan comes out of the trailer and kills 2 people. What's going to happen next? It's not like that. That's not what this series is. Because you could criticize it, is what I'm saying. But I was thinking to myself, well, why? Why? We've got more Daryl. There's going to be more Daryl. I don't know how many seasons, but that's what it feels like at the very least. I'm not mad about it.
not mad about it either, but it does take away from the characters have extensive plot armor, because I know that they're going to be in another season because that was already leaked and released. And that's what I struggle with, is this cart before the horse kind of mentality that AMC has arguably always had. It's been this way for a while. We often say they're the best at spoiling their own shows. And they did that with this because we found out before this season even aired that there was a third season.
Months ago.
Yeah.
At San Diego Comic-Con.
The whole reason for cliffhangers is to make people want to come back the next season. You have your core people that are always going to watch the show no matter what. But then you also have casual viewers who tune in and like, I like watching this, so this is good. But is this ending enough to get them to come back next season? Like, oh, I have to find out what happens. That wasn't there at all.
You know what, though? I thought about this a little bit more, too, and we have to return to the fact that not everybody's in the zeitgeist, not everybody's online even. I would probably say that a majority of the fans aren't connected on social media to all the happenings that happen with the show, not looking at cons and news coming out of them.
Your casual viewer.
Yeah, and that's the majority, by the way. It's a core fandom. Usually the number's about 8 to 10% only. And then of that, how many of them are vocal? 20% of those people drive the bus when it comes to social media. And that includes, of course, the AMC accounts dedicated to this show and all shows. So, but to answer your question, those people didn't know what Carol and Daryl's fate are. However, they've probably watched the universe long enough to know that ain't happening. They're surviving this season. They'll survive the next season, probably. We know because we're plugged in and we know that there's a season 3 with Daryl and Carol in Madrid filming there somewhere, which that is the only thing that I think really bugged me, is that they're going to England right now. And I don't know if it bugs me too much, but that they'll end up in Madrid somehow. Like,
it's literally the opposite of the direction that they need to go in.
Yeah.
My guess is they'll find a boat in England and the boat will get wrecked into Spain or something. Lots of storms.
I completely agree with every sentiment that's been expressed so far. We did get a very nice, tidy wrap up with a little bow on top. It was just very quiet. I'm not mad about it. We got satisfaction. Every turn, we were like, yes, 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 the whole way through. I just wasn't screaming from the top of the hills, yes, which
yeah, they
is
got a lot of the
me.
excitement out of the way up front.
Yeah, there were a few underwhelming moments, I will say. Jacinta, for one.
Yeah.
It was sad, but not sad. Annoying, but understandable, but also like,
The whole thing.
I love how you didn't say anything about that scene. You just.
I said
so
everything.
Funny. I was like, wait.
I said
she's
everything.
She's going to describe why in just a minute. And it's just like,
she
was
did.
Annoying and this and this.
I did.
And then it was like, yeah, I know
So
in your own way.
I mean,
you know what?
okay.
It felt
I love
rushed.
it. It's fine.
I'll say more.
I just thought it was funny.
It's not even,
Yes, please.
for me personally, it's not even about feeling rushed. It just felt lackluster. Obviously, she was like, well, that's the end of that. I guess God's not on my side. And so she just ate a bullet. But I'm like, I don't.
She was bitten anyway, so she was going to bite it either way.
Somebody else could have. I guess I would have liked to see someone else kill
I
her.
would have liked it better if somebody had killed her.
Yeah, I think
Is that
that's
what
where
you're
I'm
saying?
at. I think that's where I'm at. I would have been, yeah. I don't know. It
For
feels,
all the trouble that she caused, basically.
yeah.
Is that?
I guess I don't like the idea of her getting the ending she wants. Like, she shouldn't have been able to make that decision for everything that she's done.
Oh.
What happened to the other woman?
Sabine?
Yeah. Did she run away? Was that it?
She ran away.
That's the last time I remember seeing her, is her running off. And I was like, oh, she'll come
Just
back
like that.
later.
That's exactly how I pictured it too.
It was quite
I
like
totally wanted to pick on that, but
shuffly.
I said I thought better of it, Rachel. I thought better of it.
No, that's
There's a little
exactly
waddle
what
to
happened.
it, I think, too.
There was a little
like
run.
me and my butt, like my station butt. Yeah, yeah, it was like that, actually.
That's how Dave looks when he runs.
Exactly. I keep telling you. I am Sabine.
Oh,
Did you not recognize
Oh,
the tattoo on the... Anyway, I thought about that, though, because I thought that scene was really impactful for me. There's two reasons why. One is kind of what Carol says to Ash the first time they start speaking in the episode. She says, I get it, you're trying to punish me, but it's not worse than what I'm doing to myself, essentially. I hate that I did this to you. There is a through line to Jacinta, or Jacinta, as Falou says, which I still loved. Didn't matter. You realize that she faced a guy who threw her on an ossuary wall. She survived that encounter, and she keeps going for more because of this purpose. Then she gets bitten. The blood from one of the burners, when they were penned in, gets on her face. Her face gets eaten away a bit, which I thought, was a cool look for her. It made her look even more badass than she already was, because I'll acknowledge that. But then she did exactly what Losang said when it came to Laurent. So if it doesn't work out, there's no point in me going on. But you pair that with Daryl's reaction to hearing the sound of that gun and knowing what that was. There was a weird seeing Laurent off, knowing that he's safe, but also feeling like his heart is walking outside his body, that sort of feeling, and that it is over, but it's not over, because you get what you need. You know, you take them with you when they go. There's that. And the fact that as much hell as that lady gave Caudron and Daryl and Carol and all of them, there was a sadness to it.
Well, yeah.
That we all feel that.
He sent off Laurent to give him the life that he feels that Laurent deserves, but it also steals hope from these people. Now, is that right? No, I don't think so. I think Daryl did the right thing, but in doing so, he is taking hope away from these people, and that's quite sad. And so I imagine he feels some level of responsibility. I
wouldn't even go that far. I do feel what you're feeling, and I didn't initially feel that, but I think also that people make choices. People sacrifice. It mirrors the sacrifice he made to get Laurent as far as he did. She made tons and tons of sacrificed people along the way that she knows she sacrificed. She was willing to get rid of Daryl. That was on her order, that Daryl was supposed to be disposed of in the second or third episode, I think it was. What was all that for? You see that kid go to safety. And it's probably something that she probably wanted as well. Everybody, when they saw that
It's all reiterated with Caudron. What was the whole point of all of this? He thought Daryl killed his brother, so he's like after him for months. And you come to find out it's all fake. It wasn't even really what you thought it was. And somebody lied to you, and that's how you got here. And it's kind of the same thing with this. Someone lied to you, they fed you this, and it set everything in motion. And look at what happened. All these people died. Because again, there are only two types of people now in this world. It's the undead and the living, and that's it. There are no other barriers, but they keep building them up and making them.
Yep, like the fake fake division between the Scots and the French, the froggy comments and the terrible food of the English. And but you're right, we do keep making things up.
Laurent, when he was talking to Carol, was explaining how even though it was a bad thing that started it, it was what brought them all together. You're here now. And Caudron goes the opposite of that. This misunderstanding was the start of everything. And he doesn't see the positive side to it the way that Laurent does.
I think he sees the weird thing that sometimes we all see. What's the expression? God works in mysterious ways. Mm-hmm. But it's not always going to turn out the way you think it is or what people tell you it's going to be.
Can't always get what you want.
Exactly. It's never really that. You get what you need.
But you get what you need.
You get what's ordained.
David, I thought of you in that moment.
You did?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it sounds very similar to something you always say. You might not get what you like, but you'll like what you get.
You might not get what you want, but you like what you'll get. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we said that about Fear, and some of you hated me for it. However, inarguably for me, and maybe it was for you, that first opening scene, first of all, it was very filmic between Laurent and Daryl. And I was about to say in my notes, I got a little emotional, but then when I actually started writing the notes, I flat out cried hearing Daryl singing the song with Laurent.
I did not.
This is like watching your dad cry sort of situation. You don't expect it, and when it happens, you're like, it's hard to see the people that you think are strong break down a little bit. There's that feeling that you get. I don't know about you, but me, that you get when the strongest of us feel like they're losing someone, and it's the scene. I want to be with this kid. I want to make it with this kid, but I know that in order to keep him safe, I need to be the one to stay behind. So this is really a song for him. And I thought that was really moving.
All I can say is Ash better be glad that none of them know how to fly a plane.
Truth.
Heavy is the head that wears the pilot's hat and goggles. really, because I mean, he's precious cargo.
Pretty sure he'd be the one left behind on the ground, and Carol and Daryl would take off in the plane with LeRon.
But let's rewind a minute, because what was the one thing you guys kept saying in every single episode? Is Ash going to make it? You're like, no, that guy's dead. He's so dead. He's dead. He's dead.
I
And
was
he didn't
worried.
die.
I mean, his name
was
is
very
Ash.
I think what saved him is Carol left him where he was, and then she went away. If he's anywhere near Carol, he would have been gone, dead.
It's not plot armor, it's pilot armor.
Even Carol knows. She's like, you stay here, and I'm going to go and do what I need to do.
I'm going to go
You need
there,
to stay alive.
away
Yeah.
from you. We need a cooling down period between how we were already really close together on the plane, and anything could have happened
Yeah.
up there. Flying walkers could have come.
Why not? Sharknadoes.
Wing walkers, actual wing walkers would have come onto the plane and walked the wing, and then
There's something
Anyway.
Yep.
on the wing.
On the plane. Yeah.
no, it would be more like, what the F is that? The show over. Because if that's a thing, I don't want to. I'm gonna pull a Jacinta. Basically, I just pull a Jacinta. It'd be over. You'd be sad. I'd be like, well, I'm in a better place
Well,
now.
that's like the walkers
Anyway.
that were falling out of the buildings. Remember in season 1 when they went through the city?
It's not at all like that.
Yeah.
Not at all. They went
That was Dead
kersplat.
City.
But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is they're still flying at you from out of nowhere.
You know what? Equally relevant. So yeah, I would probably Jacinta myself there too. Probably. I'm a hipster Jacinta. I Jacinta myself before Jacinta even existed in my
Ooh.
mind. Yeah, that's heavy, isn't it? But I actually thought of you, Rachel. I turned into a Carol defender. Carol, not Caryl,
Yeah.
for your information, because I just knew there would be a Carol joke about children and how many she's lost. Because it happens. We do it because we're fun people, apparently, sometimes. I felt something. I saw Carol fighting her walker self,
Mm.
and the emotion between she and who she perceives in her vision as Sophia. And instantly, for a sec, but it bothered me, us joking about her losing children. And it really, really bothered me. Whoa, hold on. Needed a moment, because it's so much to carry for one person. And I know why we do it. And I'm trying to take the edge off a little bit. It is really, really heavy. And sometimes you just have to joke about it to get by. But when I was confronted with that scene, it's like you said, Bridget, so much is left open to interpretation in this one particular scene that it doesn't make me crazy. But I really, really want to know what not only you as host think, I want to know what you in the comments thought you saw between Carol and herself as a walker and whom we perceive as Sophia Pelletier.
It was a hard scene to watch. I got pretty emotional during that sequence of events, especially when Sophia starts to walk away. And then she says, has it really been that long? That part really hit hard. For those of us who have been watching The Walking Dead since the beginning, I think maybe this was a bit more impactful because we were along for the ride in real time back in 2010, 2011. When these episodes were airing, and we were waiting the weeks in between to see what was going to happen. And we got to see in real time with weeks and time in between and rewatches as you're trying to process what you've seen. But Sophia disappears. She's told to stay put and she doesn't. And they track her. And during this time and frame in which she's gone, Carol is a mess. Carol just lost her husband, and he may have been an absolute piece of garbage, but he still was her husband. And he was
It's
eaten
complicated.
alive. It was a dark way to go. And yeah, it is complicated because you can love someone and hate them simultaneously. In abuse, you can love them and feel like you would miss them if they were gone, even though they're arguably the worst thing to ever happen to you. That's its own trauma. We get to see this relationship and friendship between Daryl and Carol blossom during this time because no one sees what Carol's going through. Everybody else just kind of leaves her alone to deal with it on her own. They're all so invested in their own garbage, like the whole Lori and Shane thing. And Andrea's mad because the men won't let her do what she wants to. And it's like all this like superficial stuff is happening outside of this. And
Well, by comparison, yes.
yeah, and Carol's like
Yeah.
really going through it, and she's going through it alone. And she's one of those people who can't be alone. That's how she ended up in a relationship that was abusive, is because you end up with someone and then you feel like you can't be alone after that. And so she's left there alone, worrying about her daughter. And the only person who bothers to take time to talk to her about it or comfort her in any way is this super redneck guy who no one else likes. Everyone's like, this guy sucks. He's such a jerk, and his brother was such a jerk. But they're able to like find friendship and connection between each other because Daryl's brother is also missing, and no one cares about that either. And so they kind of
that's complicated.
It's super complicated. All of it is just like regular human relationships are complicated. It's only natural that this show then, when we would get Carol back, would kind of revisit some of this stuff. We've revisited some things for Daryl, like finding out why his father was abusive, not there when he was there. You didn't want him to be there.
Intergenerational trauma.
Yes. For Carol, she's lost many children along the way. It was sad to hear Lizzie's name. I think that hit a little bit harder than I thought it was going to, because
me too.
That was such a traumatic way for a child to be in the world, and for you to have to put her down because she's not going to be capable of living and surviving in the world that you exist in. And she had to do that. And from the very beginning of us getting to really know Carol after Sophia, when she finally starts to become like her own person and she's not just kind of like a background character, when they really start to feed into her character, she has done nothing but truly just martyr herself over and over and over again. She puts herself in the positions to do the tough thing. And then we finally see some of that kind of come to a head when they finally hit Alexandria. There's a little bit of space to breathe. You're behind walls, and she starts to count the number of people that she's killed. That's when we first start to see this cataloging of all of the things that she's had to do. Now, to some degree, I think she put herself in some of those positions and she maybe didn't have to, and maybe she could have asked for help. But when you're in a traumatic, abusive situation for so long, the way that you swing after that goes opposite side of the spectrum. I have to do all of this on my own. I was weak before, and now I can be strong, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it by myself. Finally getting to like wrap up some of this stuff for her is really gratifying, but in the saddest possible way, because you're finally getting to see her feel these emotions that you know that she's been carrying this whole time. It's just that she kept plugging away or kept working or kept dealing with the next crisis. So there was never time to like really focus on it. And then she admits that she has forgotten what Sophia looks like, which I think when our loved ones pass, that's probably the one thing we're most afraid of. You have photographs, but there's something about not being able to recall someone's face just from thinking about them that puts so much distance between you and that person.
Take it way further. Well, I didn't think about this until you put it into words. There's a part of you that when that happens and you can't, don't you just hate yourself?
Yeah, it
that there's
hurts.
Something so broken inside you that you can't even do that for her.
How can I forget what someone looks like that I
what
love
a
so
monster.
Much? Yeah.
I'm bringing in a bit of personal for me too.
It's part of grieving. And our brains naturally retain the information that it deems most vital for your existence in the now.
Oh.
And so
yikes.
When people are gone, your brain deems it as like it's not as vital as it was before because they're not here anymore. And something about all of that is just really heartbreaking and hard. So for her to admit this thing out loud, I can't picture what she looks like anymore. And on top of that, to make matters worse, it's not like, Rachel, you and I grieving people that we love. She's grieving, and she has the worst possible image of that person is all she can think of. Not only can she not remember what she looks like, but now she can only remember what she looks like after she was turned, after she's been sitting in a barn for weeks. And that's just really hard to deal with. So when it comes to the hallucinations, I was really appreciative that she got this moment. It's not Sophia, and it's definitely not the same actress, but they picked someone who looked very similar. They did a great casting job with this little girl because she looks...
The spirit of her is enough.
Really a lot like Madison Lintz. But she finally gets to hug her and hold her baby again. And she looks the way that she remembers her looking from before all of the bad stuff, just when she was a little girl. And that was really beautiful. And Carol, I cannot imagine the depth of self-hatred that that woman has in her after dealing with all of the stuff that she's dealt with over the years. And so her fighting herself, I think, has a lot to do with that.
The only comment that I really have on that for myself is the way in which she does put her walk herself down. There's a silence to it that I really didn't expect. because we see Carol. She comes in guns blazing, knives wielding, and it's usually that. You see it in the fight they just had earlier with all the bioluminescent walkers, which we will go back to because we need to lift our spirits. That was very surprising to me. I could not help but think about Daryl's conversation with Caudron just before that, in which he says, when you have to put down someone that you love, you lose a part of yourself. Now, we know that Sophia didn't have to do that, and we know that Rick took that away from her. Just kidding. He did. He did
Carol.
that for everybody.
Carol didn't have to do that. You said Sophia.
Right. That's what I meant. Sorry. Whoa, there's a lot of meaning in that. Let's not deconstruct that. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't a part of her that was either A, growing, that she needed to let go of, and that was the part that she may have been fighting. I tie this to Caudron because of the conversation that he had also with Laurent. I hope that someday you can forgive yourself. That's really the hope, because I know what you're doing to yourself. I know you feel the weight of all the suffering that you've wrought based on that fear/anger. And you bring that right into the scene with Melissa and Melissa. I don't know if it was her in the Walker mask, because they did talk about the behind the scenes and how they had originally molded a mask for her, because when they didn't know she was going to survive.
When she's walking up, it looks like her, but then when she's over the body, it like looks like somebody else to me.
What made me cue in on it being her was the way the hair was, but it kind of reminded me of when Michonne was walking in the woods by herself and she got into the group of walkers and the one looked like her.
When she left and she was going to go off on her own again. She's left Woodbury. She's just going to go off and go by herself again. And she ends up walking in a herd because she takes two more walker
buddies.
Yeah. When she looks over, she sees a woman that she sees herself in.
And that's when she kills her buddies and all of the other walkers that are in that group. She just loses it and goes off with all of them.
Great callback.
You were talking about Carol fighting herself. In season 5, when Rick's telling the story about his grandfather, and he's like, we are the Walking Dead. And Carol, in this episode, she mentions, she's like, I'm tired. And I'm wondering if the Carol fighting herself could also be her trying to kill that part of her that is the Walking Dead.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also forgiving herself for having to live that way for that long. The only thing I'll say in response to that, because everything you're saying is on the money, she does say, even though she only is able to see the Sophia she remembered from before the barn, after she kills herself, she still says, can I go with you? There's a little bit of dissonance in that, because you just did this thing and you just went through it. Not that much dissonance, not that much. But on the other hand, it made me think in this way, there is a little bit of a cliffhanger moment, because that's in the atmosphere along with the Bat Guano. She's taking that feeling of wanting to go with Sophia with her to England for now. And so I wonder if the Book of Carol has reached its final chapter. And it may have, and I don't know what they're going to call this series in season 3. I hope it's not a long name. But I did think about that. Is there going to be an epilogue to this? Is this story of Carol? Because it is. This season has been largely Carol focused, even though it didn't have to spell it out. That rang in my ears all the way until the end as they walk off into the non-sunset.
That's probably one of the hardest lines that she delivers. I can't imagine what Melissa went through trying to piece that together, what this means for her character. She just was told by Daryl, after bringing up the fact that she can't remember what Sophia looks like anymore, Lizzie, Henry, and these aren't even all the children that she's lost along the way. He hugs her and holds her and says it's not your fault. And I'm sure that that's been told along the way at some point, but maybe it hasn't. We don't truly know, because everything that happened with Sophia, it's like a catalyst for bigger events. When what happened to Lizzie, her and Tyrese just didn't talk about it, because neither one of them could handle talking about it and what had been brought up in that cabin. Because at this point, Tyrese knows that she had killed Karen and David in the prison.
Right. He was the most mad about that, which is why he goes on his killing spree.
They are willing to just roll right past it, because it's like, it's all just too heavy. And all they have to worry about is getting Judith to Rick. That's their goal. is getting somewhere safe. I don't know that she's ever been told that it's not her fault, but it's not like you're going to hear it's not your fault and then immediately you're going to be like, great, everything is perfect with my life and I feel better. She's still got a ton to process. So I think it's okay that she asks, can I go with you? And through this hallucination is probably wondering, like, can I just be done? I'm so tired with all of this. But there's still more to live for. And so I think that's really what it's got to be about, right? Is like her finding again what it is. What is it? She talks about how she doesn't feel at home at the Commonwealth. She says like, it's fine, but it's not home for me. And Daryl's like, well, we'll stay together. And so you're just hearing over and over and over again that Carol has always been kind of on the outside looking in and always been the protector of everyone kind of from this perimeter. And that I think we all hoped that when we left her, that was fixed, that she had found a place again, even though everything fell apart with Ezekiel, even though she had lost all these kids, she was going to stay with Judith and RJ. And so maybe she was going to be able to heal from some of this. We come to find out that's not what happened at all.
We didn't see the body.
She was looking for any excuse to leave because she felt so not at home there.
It's a good opportunity to bring up the whole Daryl getting whacked over the head with the shovel right around the time this is happening, and how he too, because Isabel's saying it, but it's really in his head. He's thinking the same thing, just like Sharon. I liked seeing Isabel again, and I like what that meant. You think you've had enough, kind of like Carol. Can I go with you, Isabel? That there's nothing left inside of you. Carol, also, you think it's over, but you won't die here. And she gingerly picks up the dog tags, which, by the way, let's take a pause. Did he pick up the dog tags from William T. Dixon's grave?
I thought maybe that was a hallucination.
Did I miss something?
I thought it was part of the hallucination.
That's hallucination because his grandfather was buried. I doubt he dug him up and took his dog tags.
I had that dark thought as well. Like, did he just go in there and just pick them up? Okay, anyway, that's fine. Can we all agree that the imagery of that was kind of weirdly cool, even though if we had to nitpick on it, it would be annoying, but I just liked it. But the gently and gingerly picking up the dog tags, not like him. And then you see him, and you did see him in the opening scene to one of the episodes in the last season, which I thought was super cool of them to do. They didn't have to do it, but there was something.
Like the only flashback we've ever gotten was to World War II.
The only pre-apocalypse flashback was from way back. It was like 100 years ago. No, it wasn't. It was 80, maybe. Yeah, but then you see Bill Dixon slowly turn around, somberly walking away. Remember what we first met? I told you, bet on hope. And that was enough for him. But just gathering my thoughts from what you all said, they may not be, both of them at this point, on the self-starter page. It's like what Dee Dee was saying a couple episodes back. Or was it just the last one? I can't even remember at this point. But she says, you got to find the reasons. Now, Daryl still has many reasons. Carol, what is Carol's reason to live?
Right now, it's Daryl.
Exactly.
Daryl.
That's kind of where I was going with that. And so,
dog, maybe.
We haven't said this on the podcast, but Seven did actually pass the dog actor who played Dog. Now, I don't give up hope because life is like that. Life sometimes leaves you to the point of what I said probably from the beginning of the season, which is sometimes you have to break something in order to build something new. Maybe this is also the cliffhanger, that we've reached this part where we've broken, and like any broken thing, there are jagged edges, pieces don't fit. You kind of have to figure out how to rebuild you. And like anything, or any one of us who've experienced loss, you need to figure out who you are fundamentally in some senses after that loss. What does this mean? Who am I now? Who did I think I was before? And what am I now? There's a lot of room for Carol to grow from this moment on. We may even see Carol in situations, in ways, in circumstances that show Carol doing something she wouldn't normally do, just to see what that looks like. It does make me a little bit excited about how this character will continue in the universe. It's something I've been waiting for, and I'm not going to get it until next season. I'm trying to inject a little hope, kind of like what Isabel says to Daryl, but it's really Daryl saying it to Daryl. Bet on hope. I gave you something. Use it. I want to see what that looks like moving forward. Rachel.
What?
Hi.
Hi.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
That was a lot, wasn't it?
That scene got me then, and it just got me again now. I
personally probably have a lot of unresolved trauma that I try not to think about. And I think part of the reason I relate so much to Carol on just so many levels, I think I've mentioned it before, I don't know. I lost a child when I was pregnant and only later found out it would have been a girl and her name would have been Sophia. Watching Carol talk to Sophia in this episode and saying that she wanted to go with her punched me in a way I didn't expect. And watching her have to kill that part of herself that most likely was carrying a lot of guilt, not just Sophia, but, you know, like Daryl pointed out, all the kids, and unfortunately we've made fun of it a lot, but we have to, right? Because the reality is just too hard. It's hard not to feel guilty because our children are our responsibility. And if they don't make it, no matter the circumstances, you feel like you're at fault.
I know. And I know everybody's told you it's not your fault. I'm going to say it again because like we can't hear it enough in our lifetimes, but it's not your fault. But I know what it's like to carry that around and really feel like it is. Like, could I have done more to change the way that this went when really it truly is something completely out of your hands? Your
control.
It's hard for women. And it's not just like the hormone aspect of it, but it's also the fact that in that moment, that was your job. Yeah. I completely understand. I know how hard it is.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
But there's always that voice. We all have it.
And that voice comes from many places. Yeah. I've experienced the loss as well. And for the longest time after that loss, I've tried to figure out ways where I was responsible for that loss. Because in doing so, you feel like it's my life. I have to feel like I have some measure of control in it. But then you realize we live through the choices of not only ourselves, but through the choices of others and through non-choices that have nothing to do with us. But you turn to yourself because you're so in yourself and so in what you thought you had control over. Because we all have to believe, it's no stranger that religion is injected in this episode because you feel like when you have religion, it brings order to what is ultimately chaos, or at least the perception thereof. You perceive that the world has some sort of order in a world where, objectively speaking, how is it possible that there are so many asteroids, so to speak, flying in space and that they don't hit this planet, or meteors or comets? How is that possible? You use religion to rationalize that fact of the universe, that we are still here. And so we're going to continue being here. But then in having that feeling, because you need that feeling to move on, to be able to live a life. So when something like this happens, it wrecks what you think is order. It shakes your world to its very core, because for the longest time you had to believe that you had some control over it. But you learn that you don't, and that things do happen that are completely out of your control. It's not in your hands, not all the time. This is not very comforting. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be sad that, oh, it's not you. It's not in your hands.
Well, when we're talking about this,
it's not okay.
We're talking about like the end of this episode, Dave, and they're walking off together. You really have to focus on the fact that hope is really what gets us through. And that's why it's mentioned by Isabel. For me, my hope comes from my faith. But even if you don't have a faith system, hope is really what carries us on in life. Hoping that things will get better, hoping that the next frog you kiss is the one, or whatever, like whatever it is that you're hoping for. But hope is truly what gets us through. And you can find that in wherever you need to find it. I happen to find it in a very particular place through religion, and that's what gets me through. Right. But when I look back on how hard life has been, we talk about trauma and why I'm like, well, this is what it's like to have trauma. It's because I've had a lot of trauma, and some of it I've processed because I do therapy, but some of it I haven't. Some of it is still really deep down in there. And even when you have processed it, who's to say that that doesn't come rear its head, because grief is such a weird thing. I mean, how many years has it been for you, Rachel? And same for me. It hasn't been a super long time. It's been a couple of years. And every once in a while, it'll pop into my head, and I'm just as sad as the day that it happened. And I don't know why some days are easier than others.
It's been 18 years.
See, that grief never goes away. Same thing with our dad's passing and all of it. you carry it along. And some days you can smile and see the world and move on and feel like life is normal. And then some days it's miserable and it's all you can do to get out of bed.
I made a promise to myself a long time ago to step out of the shadows when it came to everything. It's not just about the music that I used to write that I don't anymore. I always had this perception of when I was writing poetry or music or being a part of some sort of project that involves creation or entertainment, that I had to distance myself from the art. Let's take podcasting, for example. When I first started getting into it, I thought of myself as not somebody who was going to reach into the comments and start talking with people and DMing some of the folks in the audience and reaching out to fans of the show and stuff like that. I thought I had to have some sort of separation. Same thing with music. I realized that when Carol had left the show, we were already well on our way to including the audience and trying to grasp this nebulous mantra of we are Squawking Dead, because it's not just me. We all squawk about this thing that relates to the dead, the Walking Dead. With every moment that passed, and this is deeply linked to the pandemic and how things did change when that happened and we were all locked down and trying to connect with one another as much as we could in the space of that time in order to make people feel like they weren't alone. I had kept trying to say, think of more ways to become vulnerable and give more of myself and connect with you in particular, you guys on the podcast, the hosts mostly, because it's so easy for me to check out. This is a lot. Just to let you know, it's not, I'm not talking about the actual, I love this part. This is the best part, but the editing, the social media outreach, thinking about how much of the audience that I have to give and advertising and all that stuff. It's just a lot. And so at the end of the day, you kind of just want to check out. And for the last few weeks, it's kind of been that way for me, but I keep that mantra in my head, and it is related to that loss. When I lost my best friend, it feels like, I think it's probably a decade ago at this point. I had put a lot on myself that I shouldn't have. It wasn't my fault, obviously. But the one takeaway was I knew this. I wasn't there when he needed me. And I keep thinking of him when we have these discussions, because I have to keep thinking to myself, am I not connecting? Am I not there for you when you need me? It's not just you hosts, it is the audience too. I'm not saying I owe you anything, but I feel like I owe myself to give a little bit more of myself to you guys. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that loss can become a wake-up moment if you let it, that we can take that and become something else. And I know this about myself. It takes me time to change my ways. I have to try things out. I have to see if this is working. I have to dip my toe in the water. It's frustrating for me. I think that's what really hit me about this episode, is that, like you said, Bridget, it's not your fault. Oh, I'm over it. No, no. The luxury of having to see Carol across time, mostly avoiding her pain, is finally seeing her step into the story. And maybe that is the answer to the question of A, is it over having killed her walker self, the Walking Dead part of her, as Sharon D said, that she's been living? Is it over when she says, take me with you? No, it's the beginning. It's admitting out loud the thing that you've been thinking all along. And now, like I said, this could be a cliffhanger. This is the beginning part of her journey.
Yeah, it's going to be about finding the things to live for.
The good out here, you mean?
Yeah.
Said with less words.
Yeah, the good out here.
Yeah, the good out here.
I do really hope we continue to see this journey for Carol too, because this is the first time she's really facing things and recognizing it. I think she's felt it before, but I feel like these are the first steps for her actually confronting it and saying, I'm going to move forward in a healthy way. I really, really want to see her continue this journey. So I hope they give us
to
more.
make room for herself.
Yeah, I really hope they continue with this specific storyline for Carol.
I do too. I think based on what we saw in season 1 and some of that kind of coming back to play in season 2, I've said this before with previous episodes, but it does seem like someone in the writer's room, whether it be several or one, but someone does have a real firm grasp of what grief is like to navigate. Yeah, I think we will continue to see that just because we've already seen 2 full seasons of it. It's not at the forefront always. It's kind of navigating in the background as they're working through other things, the here and now of it. But I think it'll continue. I really hope that it does, because the writing has been really spectacular so far. And so I can't see that really changing as we head into the third season.
To add a little bit more to that, because what you're saying hits with me so hard. You go into the 5th episode or the 4th episode, and the unfortunate part of having to do this podcast is you get these episodes hopefully early, and it's 3 a.m. The time change occurred, and I don't know. I watched it in the morning. I don't know about you guys. But no, then we have to jump on here and say what we think.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that is we've had several episodes in a row, maybe 3, maybe 4, where maybe we thought a way about it initially. And I'm glad to have you here. It could help me speed the process of me actually really thinking about this episode further, because I went from Isabel dying and having that episode almost be the worst thing, that I didn't want to be talking about this episode anymore, to really thinking that was the best episode of both seasons. That really wowed me. And this episode, for me, I had the same feelings that Sharon did as far as season finales go, as far as bangers, cliffhangers. Did I feel satisfied? Not so much at first, but now that I'm here with you, with all of you, also in the audience, I'm feeling you from a distance. I really do think a different way about this. This episode really blooms a lot over time, just like that episode. When you really sit there and think about what just happened. Did everything I want to have happen? No, maybe not, but something else happened. And the more I think about this episode, the harder it hits. And I really appreciate having your voices add to that cacophony of thoughts that I'm having about this episode and about this universe and about this character, whom, just to remind you, I found myself defending against a comment that was in my head about her losing children. And then Rachel started talking, then I got really emotional, feeling that again, because I feel like Daryl all over again. That one scene where Alpha was really just laying into Daryl with her knife in, was it The Walking Dead season 10? His vision's getting blurry because she cuts him right over the eyebrow situation. The blood's dripping into his eyes. And I'm like, oh, I could lose this guy. I mean, I know he has plot armor intrinsically, but at the time I was a little confused. And I realized, oh, I don't want to lose him. I don't want to lose Carol. As much as I have my criticisms, I feel like a bad person now because here we are again. I'm getting older. I want these characters to survive. I don't want people to die anymore. The Walking Dead universe, the audience has gotten older, and it's, you know, we're losing
Dave,
parents, we're losing
how
grandparents.
many people have we lost along the way in this show? I mean,
They
we've
don't matter.
lost so many people in this show. People
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
loved, people we
Yeah.
really liked, people that were still angry about the way that they died. I mean, Rachel's still angry. I'm still angry. I'm still angry about
I was a
Noah.
younger man.
I'm still angry
You know what I
about
mean? Like-
Carl.
Oh yeah, objectively the most brutal death.
And
Yeah,
so is Chandler.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So it's hard to keep along for the ride going like, okay, well, we're going to lose somebody else. I just know it. I mean, we do know it. We know it going into the show, but did I foresee Isabel dying? No. I did not see that happening. It got spoiled for me. No offense to anybody here. It's fine.
That was my bad. Sorry.
Sylvie's death was also spoiled for me by AMC
That wasn't me.
themselves. So it's okay. It was my fault for not getting the episodes fast enough. I didn't think it would happen. And I thought maybe we're going to finally get to see a little bit of happiness for this character who has just really had a rough go of it his whole life. And we'd lose that. Now, I'm glad we get to see this moment in the hallucination where he gets to see her again. And then we get to see, okay, this still makes me mad.
fireflies.
They're not fireflies. They're lightning
liked it.
bugs. The man is from
you were
the
in my
south.
head.
The man is from the south. They would have been lightning bugs. I don't like that they're calling them fireflies. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in
I'm from
Georgia,
Los Angeles.
maybe in Georgia they call them fireflies, but here they call them lightning bugs.
We call them lightning bugs up here too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's like a pretty southern
I always
thing.
call them
Fireflies.
lightning
I grew
bugs.
up with it kind of being interchangeable.
Same here. I lived in Jersey for a little while, so we called them both things. In New York, going back and forth.
That was really beautiful to see, kind of intermixed with this bioluminescence that's happening in the background. It was really pretty.
Wasn't there
And
something cute about it?
It was. Well, it was really touching.
I like when they opened their mouths and the inside of their mouths were glowing like jack-o'-lanterns. Very Halloween.
Oh, I loved that. And the fact that he
Oh,
had
Halloween,
put on the
yeah.
mask to get a couple gulps of fresh air and still could see her, something about that almost
I
made
didn't
it
think about
feel
that.
real. I know that the hallucination wouldn't subside automatically, but something about it made it feel tangible, like she had visited him. I don't know. Something about that was really special, I thought, and kind of intertwines with this whole concept of faith and hope, which has really been
And that the people that we lose don't have to leave us, too.
correct. And it's been such a theme.
Even though we can't see them.
These first 2 seasons. But yes, let's talk about these walkers because that was so cool. And all I kept thinking was, if this is what special effects is, then I want to do that because that is so cool.
Did you see the episode or Insider?
No, I never watched those.
You
Never
should-
watched.
well, half of that is the behind the scenes on how they made the stuff. And you really should have. You
Okay.
really-
Well,
it
maybe
was
I'll go back and watch it.
amazing to
Go back and
watch.
it.
Just something to think about because you were talking about Carol keeping it together and not going crazy and stuff like that. If not for Daryl, she could have easily become a Dirty Martha.
True.
Wow. She was kind of on her way for a little
Yeah.
while too.
You are correct.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that though. You're right. Him not having that Cherokee Rose moment and looking for her kid. By the way, it would be easy to blame the rest of the cast because of what Bridget was building up because everybody's involved in their own drama. But
Mhm.
really, it's really not in their control. You have literal threats
Well,
all around you.
Yeah,
The threat
no,
of Shane, the threat
that's
of
not what I'm-
Andrea.
that's not what I'm saying. I'm just
no,
saying,
I
like,
know.
this is how grief works. When you're really going through it, you're frustrated by 2 different things. It's opposite sides of the same coin. So it's that much more aggravating in your own mind because it doesn't make any sense. I'm mad because life didn't stop for everybody else.
Right.
It stopped for me, but it didn't stop
Yes.
for anybody else. But then I'm also mad because I don't need to be treated differently. I'm still an adult person who can function and be normal. Don't walk on eggshells around me. You
I
can't
didn't quite
win.
feel that
Right.
way.
In grief, you cannot
I
win.
get it.
There is no winning. The only thing that you can really do is just be there for somebody. And that's exactly what Daryl did. He was the only one who got it in that moment because he was literally going through something so similar. And everyone was just talking about how his brother was a big pile of garbage. Not super sensitive, I might add, but that's fine.
It's like you further answering the question of why he didn't talk about himself. Well, he could have talked about Isabel. He could have talked about Merle. He just let Cadron.
He knows what it's
let him
like.
talk.
Yeah, he knows what it's
Oh
like.
no, I love that this came back around on that. Couple steps back as we talk about the bioluminescent walkers. When they spot it from a distance, Fiona says, "Oh, there's bioluminescent fungus in these tunnels because they needed to survive or do their thing, whatever." And Daryl goes excitedly. It was just something that it's just very childlike about it. And he's like fireflies. And she goes, "Yeah, exactly." I just thought that was cute. It was
So
just
sweet.
cute. It's like he
So
learned
sweet.
something and he just couldn't wait to say it. He was thinking of her is what I was thinking. It was just adorable and I love it. And I can't believe I'm a Daryl simp now, but I am. Here we are.
There is a bioluminescence that happens. It was noted especially in battles in Scotland, particularly. Soldiers who had fallen, their wounds would glow with bioluminescence.
Oh,
And it
wow.
had to do
Right,
with the...
right. I remember
right.
hearing about this.
So it had to do with the bacteria or whatever that
was it
that got
was it
into
a
their wounds.
fungus?
I don't think so. Their wounds would bioluminesce.
It was like a blue glow of some kind.
I thought it was really cool that Fiona and Angus were the ones that introduced them to this battlefield bioluminescence.
I was very sad that they were horrible people.
Yeah, but I gotta say,
They're just trying to save themselves,
I know.
I know.
Because you could
And
easily
they
draw
were-
parallels between
killed very viciously.
them and
I don't want to
And-
say
but
that they were
righteously.
terrible people because they were friends with Falou. I think their intentions were admirable. They really,
he just met them in the demi-monde.
they really.
Yeah, true. We don't know. They really weren't that close. Just goes to show that you can't trust people right away because they were kind of like every man for himself because he was going to kill Daryl. He's like, well, I'm going to kill him. I'm not just going to leave him here. I'm going to kill him. Which seemed to cross a line.
There's like a cultural element to this too, because in France you hug and you do the cheek kisses, and so there's like a bit of a
And
welcoming.
in Scotland, they kill you.
That's the no. Yes, yeah. So hold on a second. But why did Angus want to put Daryl out? Look, it's every man for himself, but at the same time, I can't watch this guy
Doesn't
suffer.
want to make him suffer.
Right?
Yeah.
At the same time, there's a little bit of cultural significance to their moves. I mean, not to treat them as caricatures, but
I have another question
Here we
since
are.
we're in this location. We hear Fiona talk about the bat guano high. Breathe bat guano for long enough, you're going to start going crazy. They weren't down there that long. I don't feel like it would have taken effect that quickly.
I agree with you. In my mind, the way that I like rationalized it was, did this have something to do with the fungus that's growing on these bodies and the bioluminescence? Has it amplified what's in the air, and has that caused this to happen?
Also, Carol kicked
Was
the
it
pile.
when Carol kicked that pile over
Right, and it all
like,
went up in the
sprayed?
air. Mm-hmm.
It bloomed.
Well, maybe it kicked out some spores.
I mean, you have to really think about this because they have this impression that the checkpoints have always been there. They're the English. This is like this weird.
That was the
Oh,
impression
the Empire
I
is
got.
always going to be there, and they keep inching closer and closer to France. However, yeah, they've been dead a long time. Those people at the those soldiers at the checkpoint, and so you realize they have not been there in a very long time. They just said they came to France. They had this notion while the apocalypse was happening to come to France. Like, I always dreamed of it, and they made it happen, which I kind of like that story, but they're dead, so who cares? They see they're basically skeletons. Most of them, the ones that were inside the tent, were protected enough from the elements, quote unquote, even though there's not much element to be had. But the ones that were outside were visibly skeleton-like. It informs you on the scene. What is the only thing that's able to survive in these caves? Maybe rodents, maybe bats. If the bats have been multiplying and multiplying and dropping guano over the course of 12 years in 9 kilometers, I think a bunch of it not only piles up, but dries up in stagnant air with no... This is another thing that you have to kind of remember about tunnels, is that to reduce wind resistance, you have to kind of... Well, I'm sure the whatever ventilation there is in the tunnels is now all clogged up. And so all the air in that tunnel, basically, there's no Bernoulli effect where there's airflow going, and you don't want that in a tunnel anyway, so that the cars don't have as much wind resistance. Bottom line, the atmosphere is just saturated with this dried, aerosolized bat guano, concentrated. I can see a world in which maybe in the beginning, over time, as those checkpoint soldiers were there, it took a long time for it to take effect. But after a while, they died. Rats are eating on their body. The population of the animals in the tunnel is growing. Their bats are flying around everywhere, pooping on, making the fungus grow.
They're 1 kilometer in too, because we see the second yellow door, which means that they've hit another half kilometer at least. So we can assume that they're at least 1 kilometer in to the tunnels. So they've been breathing it in for a while, I guess, too.
The deeper they go, too.
I must have missed a line somewhere. So Angus and Fiona were in France for how long?
I think from the start.
I don't know that they for sure gave it to us, but it sounded like they left when the apocalypse started, or at least shortly thereafter.
I missed that part. So what I heard was Fiona telling whoever that it took them 9 hours to get through the tunnel the first time. So in my head...
You're right. 9 hours, 50 kilometers.
Yeah. I didn't think it had been that long since they had just gone through that tunnel. So when they showed back up and everybody was dead, I'm like, holy crap, didn't you just come through here? What the heck happened? So okay.
They're all dead a long time.
Yeah, no, that's why I was so confused. I'm like, wait a minute. And then the bat guano thing happened so quickly. And I'm like, these checkpoints have been down here for a long time. How is it taking effect so quickly on them, but not anyway, my brain went several different directions and I got confused there for a second. But now everything is lining up because Angus and Fiona, it was years and years and years ago that they had gone through these tunnels originally. That makes a lot more sense.
Let's add a little to that because of the flavor that we've been bringing to this podcast about how our brains have to feel like we have control over our situation, our life. And so when you take that and you put that on what Fiona's and Angus's perceptions are about this tunnel, they're thinking in their head, oh yeah, they'll be there. They'll always be there. The Empire will remain even through the apocalypse. And then they find out that that's not true. But that's a realization that we came to a long time ago. We resorted to the fact that, oh yeah, the Walking Dead universe will eat away at every institution that we used to have. That didn't really hit them. For as awful as France has been for the people who've lived there, there is a little element of the grass is greener on the other side that maybe Angus and Fiona had the time of their lives in France for all this time. And so they're thinking, okay, vacation is over, 12 years in, we've had a good run. Let's go back and see the people that we miss. No, this isn't a pleasure cruise. No, this is how it is everywhere. There was a part of me that was going along for their ride, though, that it would be kind of interesting to see some sort of old guard maintained. Wouldn't it be interesting if what they're saying is true, that England does have its S together? And like that would inject a little bit of excitement into the universe.
Well, we don't know that that's not the case.
True.
We just know that the channel has been
and that's noteworthy.
Taken over by, well, really nothing. The channel's
The
taken
universe.
over by guano.
And then some. The universe.
Stop
'Cause it's not
saying
just
the
about the
universe.
dead,
It's
it's
so
about
weird, Dave. This is like when you said
the
earlier,
universe.
I have to come out from cover of the shadows. And I was like, that's a weird way to start this podcast, but okay.
Very dramatic. Yeah. I say what I say. You do
Stop
too.
it.
All the time.
Stop it.
He can't help it. It's his programming.
But it was interesting to see that. I think, well, even in your admission, by the way, Rachel, you thought that this tunnel had a checkpoint too, with people manning it as well. Yeah. And it's interesting to see us. It's like when we talk about quote unquote the cure. It's never going to happen. But for a second, we kind of forgot. That's okay. It's because we thought we had control. We don't. It's a nice little reminder that we don't, but we don't. But I like that. I sincerely like that. I like that. I forgot that the people that we love are going to die on these shows, because that's the number one criticism about these shows lately is that, oh, yeah, everybody seems to survive. No, we're going back to our roots, unfortunately, or fortunately. See, I'm trying to appreciate it.
I want to talk about Falou getting some action.
Yes, finally, Falou, you handsome man.
Get it, Falou.
Yeah.
Getting a beautiful woman.
Right?
Holy cow.
Do we start with Caudron's love at first sight comment way in the beginning?
Cute. Again,
so cute.
I would totally watch the Caudron Falou road show.
Buddy Cop spinoff.
Yes, I would watch that forever.
Who's good cop and who's bad cop in that situation?
Also, I can't call his lady friend anything other than Kyle now.
Oh, yeah.
Because of
Aquila.
Bridget's friend Aquila. Spelled differently.
So she's according to the captions, yeah.
She looked a lot like a beautifully aged Connie. I don't know why.
She reminded me of Tamara Tooney. She was the medical examiner on Law and Order.
Oh, she
Was she
does
French?
look a little bit like her.
Tamara Tooney. Yeah, that's her name.
No, Tamara Tooney. Oh, she's also stunning.
Beautiful.
Stunning. They had a similar air about them because they both have like a really good posture and this like, she knows everything. She just had it. I can't describe it to you, David. Just je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, and she had conviction.
She was that girl and
she
a
knew
new
what
girl.
She knew what she stood for, and she wasn't gonna back down on. I love the devotion she had to her sister, no matter what. I like you, but sister, sorry.
Family first.
Family first. I loved it.
Kind of like Daryl in the woods looking for Rick.
You know what this made me think
and Falou
of?
was around for that ride.
Isn't this what you would hope and dream for Tales of the Walking Dead were to ever come back? But to tell these stories that were left not knowing, I want to find out what happens to What's-Her-Face from Fear the Walking Dead, the wrestling woman.
Mickey.
What happens to Falou and Aquila? Do they finally find her sister? What happened to Sabine? Could we find out later? These are the things that I wished for Tales of the Walking Dead. I was happy with the anthology style that we got where it really didn't tie back. But if people are mad because it doesn't tie into the main universe, then this is what you should give us. Angela Kang, you listening?
I want to know who takes over the Demimonde.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Well, after the tirade I went on in the last episode about this being necessary for friends, I feel very complicated feelings about all of this because going back to our comments about being able to see Carol break in order to become something that maybe she was meant to be all along. First of all, the thing that is the essence of that is being blessed. We're really, really lucky to get this television. We really are in a world of streaming media and dwindling entertainment. This is inarguably the best time to watch anything because these streaming services make a bunch of shows that we end up liking that we didn't know we liked, or people are taking chances on other mediums and showing you things that you didn't know you wanted. But we live in this world, and this universe has been around for the better part of 14 years, just hit around the corner. And so I keep thinking to myself, we're so lucky to even get this. this far. And so I have mixed feelings about it because, well, if you spend too much money here, there's not enough money for this thing. We're never going to see Carol. I had that feeling at the end of this episode. We're talking about loss. We're talking about losing people. We're talking about grief. And I thought to myself, I know that they're filming season 3. I've said something like this in a similar episode about how, well, like how much of these shows can we possibly have? I have these mixed feelings about, okay, don't make this show. Drop that show. Don't make it. Just because then I want this show to keep going. There's a part of me that wants to keep going. So when we talk about Tales and more Tales of the Walking Dead, like we were breaking news 2 years ago, I thought to myself, it would be great to have these things head over heels. But there's another element to it too that's outside of the money and outside of how blessed we are as people to get this show or these shows. It's like any book that you read. All good things come to an end, and sometimes you're lucky enough to be able to leave 2 characters that have a happy ending, and you can have that journey in your mind of how that goes. Just the fact that they had the chance is so miraculous and wonderful that they can live on in my head forever, and that's fine. And maybe it's even better than having to watch it on a spinoff. Because inarguably in this universe, like I've been trying to remind you that they're trying to bring us back to the roots of how these things don't end great. And so maybe I don't want to see that. Maybe it's not meant to be. Maybe something terrible is going to happen. I don't want to see it. They're living forever in my mind as happy people. They're the new mayors of France. Falou takes over the demi-monde. I can't get that on these shows. If they make that show, they'll have to add so much fluff to that. I don't want to see that. No, Akila finds Jamila. That's great. I love that for them in my mind. It's fine. That's it. Story's over. You didn't even have to spend money on that. That was all in here.
Jamila is a dancer at the demi-monde.
And she didn't even know it. See? Better than the show can ever provide.
Because we write the show.
I'm sorry. I really am sorry.
I'm with you, Bridget. No, I'm with Bridget. I would love to see these unresolved stories.
Cool. Selfish. Just selfish. You just want everything, don't you? You just want it.
That's what fanfic is for.
I'm not a writer.
See, Sharon will do it all for you. I'll say the thing. She'll be like, that's terrible. She'll be like, yeah, that's a good. I'll include that in the story. Actually, she'll throw everything I just said out. She'll like, no, it's been done.
I will just write my own script.
I'm a watcher, not a writer.
Did this not remind you of Dead City?
Yes, very much. Especially when they were down in the tunnels and they were getting...
The tunnels?
Oh.
It reminded me so much of the hallucination scene.
Right, from the methane.
Yes,
I thought
correct.
that too.
Oh.
We got a really cool Walker reveal during that as well. The Walker King in Dead City, and in this one we got the bioluminescent walkers.
I like the bioluminescent ones
Exciting.
much more than I did the big monster part.
That's
I mean, that one was cool, but if I had to be, I'd rather be in the bioluminescent one.
Yeah.
We know why. It's fine.
It looked like a big walking pile of poop with the faces in it.
You mean pupae?
Poopy. Let it flow.
Let it flow.
Let it flow.
She almost did. And it was the death of her almost. I wanted to roll back because I feel embarrassed because when you were talking about Akila, I actually thought of Jacinta because, listen, I had Sharon in my head a little bit in that moment where it was like, okay, we like our badass. We do like our badass women. We do. And then I thought, okay, she's kind of attractive. She's taking a lot of S. She's taking some hard knocks. And when she's talking to Anna Valeria in the racetrack, she's a short person, kind of like me. And she's looking up at Anna Valeria, who's on her high heels and also pretty tall for some reason. And all of a sudden I was like, look at those eyes. I'm like, oh, okay, it's porno.
Yeah, she's a hottie with a body, Dave.
I didn't want to say that,
I mean,
but I was going to say more along the lines
was super hot once she took off the slick back
It's unfair.
hair
It's an unrealistic
stuff.
expectation for us to have in the world. People are not this good looking when you pull the average.
No kidding. Falou is emblematic of that.
No, in general, we all resemble the walkers
Makes
more
me
than we do
sick.
the stars.
Have you seen me?
I wish
After
I
a
was
full
that
night's
thin.
sleep, it's terrible.
that, Rachel, that.
Seeing a woman of conviction staring, threatening, if there's something like, it's just something switched in my brain. I'm like, oh, wait, hold on. It's like Negan. You just got 50% hotter.
It's like Ghostface for Dave.
So I liked Anna Valeri when she stood up to that lady and she was like, I could take it or leave it. I was like, yeah.
I'm so glad we continued this conversation because yes, her last words, I got that. First of all, the Gage vibes. Remember in Acheron Part 2,
Yes,
when
that
Gage
was
goes
what I
out, he
thought
stabs
too.
himself in the heart. In front of a door, there's that kind of a framing of the scene, and she's grabbing the gate until she has to let go because walkers are pulling her. It was like
she
similar.
stared that lady down the whole time too. I was like,
Yes,
yeah, you go,
silent.
lady. Yep.
She was
She didn't
the
scream.
Looking at
baddest
Maggie
bee.
dead in the eyes.
Yeah.
She was the baddest bee in that moment. She just locked eyes and was like, just carried off.
Crowd surfing.
Yeah. It's kind of what it looked like.
Worst crowd surfing
Well, yeah,
ever.
what Gage did.
Nobody cares
Or
about
best,
Gage,
if
Dave.
you think about
Quit talking about
Arguably,
Gage.
this is way better. No, I'm done with
Gage
Gage.
deserved it. Anna Valeria did not because she was.
But he's
cool.
just a kid.
Oh, whatever.
Yeah, Gage was.
Anyway,
Gage
we're
was
not
a-
going to relitigate
He
Gage.
was a dumb teenager. Teenagers make terrible decisions.
Well, he was the one that was so mean to
You
Lydia.
would know.
So
Their frontal cortex is not fully developed.
All teenagers are psychopaths.
Yeah, there's a whole
Self-involved,
song about
narcissistic.
it by My Chemical
For real.
Romance.
All right, Bridget, you got to start singing it now.
Teenagers scare the living shit out of me.
She sings the. I can't say the
Me
S.
too.
Okay, it's fine. It's
You
worth
said
the
to
bleep.
sing the song.
look, let me ask you:
That's how it goes.
if you had to walk past a corner, and on one corner was a group of walkers, and on one corner was a group of teenagers, which one would you choose?
The walkers, hands down, the
The
walkers.
walkers. Easy
Hands down.
decision.
Depends on whether we're living in the Walker apocalypse or not.
I can outrun.
You don't know what it's like to witness mean teenage girls, Dave. Not at the same level that we do.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
we were teenage girls. And
If they're
they are
girls,
so mean.
I'm going 3 blocks over. I'm skipping all of it.
I don't even want them to see me walk by.
Right.
Yeah, they will make fun of the way I walk past the walkers.
Well, I was staying with Rachel. I went to a park that I wanted to check out called the Tridges. It was just a really pretty park. So I pulled up to the park and I can see where I want to go. And there is a high school.
I remember this story. Sorry.
There is a high school track team that are warming up. And it's boys and girls. And there's like probably 40 of them. I sat in my car for half an hour waiting for those kids to warm up and start running before I got out and went out
Oh my
and
God.
looked
I
at
would
the
have too.
bridge. I just sat there. I'm like, I'm not getting out of this car. There was nowhere else I could go.
I have nothing to say. I mean, the closest I can
Teenagers are
get
mean.
is
Yeah.
some other dude is in the stall pooping, and I don't want to poop next to him. Not even 5 feet
Okay,
away from
well,
another guy that's pooping.
here's a question for you.
But I will, 'cause I'm a
riddle me
warrior.
this. Riddle me this, Dave. Why in the women's restroom do they immediately come and sit in the stall immediately next to you? There's so many other stalls.
There's
Why
so
are
many
you
other
doing
stalls.
this, you monster?
I made a prediction at the start of this podcast that you would turn on each other, women, as a women.
No,
And here you
we're
are.
not turning on
Here
each
you
other.
are.
We're turning on you.
She just wants comfort. She just wants a friendly face or a friendly butt.
We're
so to
turning on
speak.
teenage girls. They do not qualify as women.
They're still girls.
They've
They're
already
monsters.
turned on me, so it doesn't matter.
Teenagers in general are monsters.
Plymouth Rock fell on me.
Some are worse.
Oh man, I
Oh
can't
my
even
gosh.
breathe right now. Anyway, speaking of swear words, I felt the same way. Ash gets up in the air and he goes, "Suck on it, motherfucker!"
Yep.
I felt that shit.
I did too.
Worth
It's
the
what
bleeps in my
it's
head.
what I yelled at you basically not that long ago, and you cut it out of the episode so nobody knows. But
Just for that, I'm going to cut this out. I need that fire.
Are we going to see Laurent and Ash again? And did Carol bother to tell him where the Commonwealth was? Or is he just going to wander around Ohio? And
I thought the same thing. I get why Carol had to hop out and save the day. But how are they going to? She had to have given him a map or something,
yeah,
right?
she must have
The-
because you have to plan for every contingency. Let's say you landed again
Yeah.
to refuel, and when that happens, another situation comes up and Carol dies. So you have to have like a
Absolutely.
map ready to go in case Ash is left on his own to figure out where to take this kid. So I'm sure they did.
Laurent would have figured it out.
Because
He's such a smart kid.
I would imagine you'd also have to have some sort of note or something to be able to convince them
Yes.
that you knew these people. Because otherwise, this is a crazy story to tell
I was
someone.
just
if
gonna
they
say
roll
that
up
to
with
you.
Laurent and Laurent's like, yeah, I met Daryl and Carol, and this is what they did, and this is what they. All Ash has to do is be like, Carol lied to me, and I flew to France for her, and they'd be like, oh yeah, you knew Carol.
Oh yeah, that checks out. That checks out.
Ezekiel in particular goes, yeah, that makes sense. I married her for how many years?
And Daryl talked a lot to me.
Yeah.
I don't think we know the same Daryl.
Whoa. She apologized to you? That's not her.
Wait, you kids spent time with Carol and you're still alive? Can't be true.
Oh no!
It's funnier, Sharondy, because you got cut off a little.
It's
like
censored
the
you.
universe said, don't make the joke. Don't make the joke. It's going to be in the final episode. But here's this that you don't know, audience. She got cut off in our end. She was so animated. She broke it.
I did have all those thoughts flying through my head. How are they going to find the
I was
Commonwealth?
so glad
when
they
they
were
do
gone.
get there, how are they going to prove that Carol and Daryl were the ones that sent them? And
Especially if Rick and Michonne are back.
right?
Because
Michonne
they don't
knows not to
believe
trust
anybody.
and Michonne knows better than anybody
Except
not to trust
themselves.
children.
Oh, man.
When he was looking for the hose to connect the gas tank so they wouldn't have to switch.
Why did I picture
Damn it,
Buffalo
Rachel,
Bill?
you're in my head.
I pictured Buffalo Bill, like totally.
When he was looking for the hose to connect the tank, it made me think of Sarah saying that the tank on the truck, this ain't bottomless mimosas, Chief. Tanks aren't
Fear
connected,
the Walking
right?
Dead. Yeah.
So how was it just that ran? She popped into my head when he said that was what he was looking for.
Oh, now you got me on this train of thought of where is Sarah? Oh, I hate everything. Wouldn't that be great though if they ran into her somehow?
If only we had a show that would talk about these things.
It would have been totally cool if they'd pulled Strand
Scott
in
and
as the pilot.
Gimple.
If Strand had been the pilot instead of Ash.
No.
Because Strand was a pilot. So that could have been a cool way to pull the shows together.
We have drawn comparisons between Strand and Carol on this show when you guys were not a part of it. Not even you, Rachel, I don't think. There is something there. You're not off the money, Sharondy. But I'm glad that it was Ash. Okay, just like Jacinta, but on the other end of the spectrum, Ash got 50% more attractive in this episode. There is something about a man who can forgive in his own way and go through
I
on a
thought because
journey.
he yelled.
Yeah. There is something about yelling.
Like I
Also the
said, it's
mother
like
effer.
Ghostface for Dave.
He dropped the F-bomb and
because-
Dave was like, oh!
That's a thing, Dave. There's a viral
Yes.
thing on TikTok about Ghostface and how if Ghostface was chasing you, girls like pretend to run and then they like slow down and, and like turn to look at him.
Throughout the episode, there is this weird bringing up of water, dehydration, lack of water, the horses,
The
the car,
coolant.
the radiator overheating.
The water coming through the tunnel.
Correct. Overhead. It's not the water that kills you, it's the pressure. And then they talk about Scotland, and it's like, you want to talk about a wet dream? Scotland. It's all wet all the time. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, because what are we doing here? There's some weird poetic narrative allusion to a lack of water, an overabundance of water, not enough water.
Might have to do with washing clean. We lacked the cleansing of moving on in your grief or accepting your grief, or I don't know, could have something to do with that. I don't want to speculate too much because maybe it comes into play in the next season. We just don't know it yet.
So there's a saying like water everywhere, but nary a drop to drink. What you need is everywhere.
Because you can't always get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
But if you try, sometimes you'll get what you need.
Yes. Thank you. That's where I was
Daryl
going.
at the beginning of this series, floating on a upside down boat, strapped to it, couldn't drink any water. First thing he does is gets to the beach and picks up a pail of what might be salt water, but it happens to be French water. French water. French water. Well, technically it is French water.
When you drink it, you're like,
Not wrong.
oh, this
He was like,
water is so good.
Oh my goodness.
Allow it. It's fine. We're leaving. It's okay.
Sorry, France. Not really. We're
Well,
enemies. I don't know if you remember.
French water would technically be wine because they drink wine like water
Fair.
there. There you go, Dave. There was
Fair.
also wine in the episode.
Which you can make out of dandelions, by the way, I just found out.
You brought up the water everywhere and nary a drop to drink. But I thought you were going to say water under the bridge as like a classic saying.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Sure. These are really good answers. There is water everywhere.
Take
Well, maybe
me
there's
to
water
the
is in a sense for
river.
forgiveness.
Drop me in the water, Billy Bass.
This is like Fireflies all
Billy
over again.
Bass.
I know. Oh,
like
well,
fire-
okay. There
it's
is
like Firefly
some sort of.
people.
It's like Fireflies all over. If you like what you heard, head on over to ratethispodcast.com/squawking dead. 5 stars and the Firefly. We're going to do that. That's like my signal that, yeah, a point has been trampled on. Let's move on. It's all we need to know that you love us. But tell us what you liked. Tell us what you didn't like. Tell us all the things we definitely missed. Like Falu's whole conversation on racism and how I like that I was reminded that the apocalypse was an equalizer. But tell us after every episode. It's really, really important. And maybe you can say a little bit more about what I just said that we're not going to. But if you really like what we're doing and you want to be in the chat as we record, the very least you can do or want to do if you feel like it is head on over to Ko-fi or Patreon, follow us for free, and you'll get the schedule so you'll be able to pop into these recordings for free as well. But like we've said for the last month, we could really use your help producing the show that you seem, I think you made it to the end to love. Because we kind of need it. We need the economic certainty. You could tip us on either Ko-fi or Patreon. You'll have instant Discord access forever. Once you do, you'll be able to get the unedited episode recordings for 30 days. Take that support further. Join a membership tier today for as little as $4 a month. You'll get a bunch of perks in the Ko-fi shop. You'll get some sign-on bonuses when you join on Patreon, some exclusive merch that we have in the tank, little mini prints, one of which is the Kirk Manley comic book cover print in like 4x6 format. We have an exclusive hoodie for the higher up tiers. We have exclusive stuff that you should check out at patreon.com/squawkingdead. But I think if you like not spending a lot of money, head over to ko-fi.com/squawkingdead. Join a membership tier today, or at least check out what's on offer and help produce the show that you could have a say in, whether it's in the ratings, whether it's in our Discord, whether it's on our page. Think about it. Get back to us, because I've been your host, David Cameo.
I have been and always will be Cosmo Mom 09.
Lazy Gardner.
And Bridget. AKA Punky Brewster. You can learn more about me by going to ko-fi.com/Punky Brewster. That's PUNKYBRUISETER. Adieu. I don't know who that was. What just happened?
The spirits are coming through you.
Here was her thought process during that time. She goes, I'm gonna do it the way Dave should be. And then she realized you have to become the horrible monster in order to do it.
I didn't like it. It was like I was
Is
wearing
that
a
it?
fedora.
Is that accurate?
She just drank some French water.
Like an edgelord?
Yeah, like an edgelord.
But with that, everybody, we wish you not only adieu, but au revoir, meaning many happy returns. And
Slan.
au revoir, les enfants. Irish.
Yes.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Really.
Sarge of
Yes.
Iris.
French show?
We're
This
Gaelic
bitch.
in this house.
Shalom, everybody.
See?
What's happening? Everybody, this is the United Nations. Well, if Gerald
like
gets
it.
to be in France, I guess he can be in Israel. Maybe
Everybody
even
say
China.
goodbye in their native language.
Goodbye.
Bye.
English? Bye.
Is that not your native language?